Hi book friends, this is Kat. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have a stack of books for my wrap up for the second half of August. Now, I also am going to tell you what I did end up reading for the retoldathon, but that will be at the end of the video. So let's get started. So in August, I did do a separate video where I did the first half, and now this is the second half, and I've read or been through 7 books for the second half, and I had 2 DNFs, 2 3-star, 1 3.5 star, and 2 4 stars. So let's go ahead and start with the DNF. So for those who don't know, on my channel, I do technically count DNFs as like having tried to read the books, and I am trying not to DNF like super fast, but there are some hardcore lines that I just don't pass, I guess. And one of those has to do with language. And so the first book I will talk about is Artemis by Andy Weir. Now, I've tried 2 other books by Andy Weir. The first one was The Martian, and it does have language in it. It does have a character who has a potty mouth, but I've read that like years ago, and I guess my tolerance for language kind of is now being, my tolerance for language is now a little less. And so, and also I've watched the movie The Martian and it didn't have that much language in it, so that one didn't bother me as much, and that was like years ago. And then I've read Project Hail Mary, which I don't remember language being an issue at all in that book, and that was a really, really good book. So this was the last one I haven't read from Andy Weir. And so this is about a woman who is living on the moon, and she is trying to pass this test so she could be like a tour guide on this moon. The story kind of ensues from there. I think she joins like a heist for something later on. I didn't really get that far. I only got to page 9 in this book, because all those 9 pages, there was every form of language, I guess, that you could think of. So I just decided that this was just not going to be a book for me. And so that was the main reason why I put this down. I just didn't want to read anymore, especially since the main character, I didn't like her character, and she was the main one who was had that language. So all right, that one was the first DNF. The second DNF is kind of funny because this has been on my TBR for maybe a year already, and if you've been on my Goodreads, you've probably seen that I've been currently reading this book. But this is Church Elders, How to Shepherd God's People Like Jesus, and this is by Jeremy Rennie. I have another book in this series, or I guess it's a series because it is 9 books, I think. So it says 9 marks, building healthy churches, and so I have a deacons one, and I really enjoyed that read. And so I bought this one when my husband became an elder, and we were going to read through it together. And I just never found myself wanting to pick this up. My husband didn't really find that he wanted to pick it up. It was a little more slow going, and I guess it just didn't feel that it was ever a good time for us to want to pick it up. So, I mean, there's nothing bad about the book. I don't think that it's unscripturally sound. It was just something that we just found that we weren't in the mood to read. And for this being on my TBR for a year and still not wanting to pick it up, even when we did pick it up, it was just kind of felt slow, and I don't know. I just felt like I wasn't gaining new insights, and it was just not that enjoyable for us. So this, like I said, is not that I found that it wasn't biblically sound. I think I would rate this as a 3 for Christian fiction rating, but yeah, it was just not for us. So that was unfortunate. I really like the Deacon one though, so I don't know. They all are written by different authors, so it's not the same person writing like the different types of positions in the church. So yeah. All right, let's go to our 3-star reads. The first 3-star I'm going to talk about is a Melanie Cellier book, and that is Happily Ever Afters. This is a short novella, and I did enjoy my time with it. It was sweet, it was cute. You follow 2 cousins as they basically find their happily ever after. One cousin is a guard in the Royal Army, or is trying to be like the main guard for the princess, and her cousin is basically like the princess's best friend or really close friend. And so this is supposed to be a retelling of Red Rose, which I've never read before, and Snow White, I believe. I'll put it down here. The other princess, I can't remember. Maybe it was Sleeping Beauty, but that's what the retelling was supposed to be about. And I saw bits of it, but not really. So, but it was a cute short novella, and I think the cover is stunning. So, yeah, I would say this was also a Christian fiction rating of a 0, because I think that there are some elements that could be allegorical, but throughout this kingdom series, you kind of get like there's this high king, and I think that's supposed to represent like God. That's how I took it. So okay, the next 3-star read I have is A True Princess by Diane Zayler, I think that's how you say her name. But this one, it's a middle grade, so it's about a young girl who is a terrible servant. She was found and raised by this family, and she's like really close to the siblings, like the 2 siblings, and she decides that she's going to leave the family because the stepmother, I don't know if that's the mother or the stepmother, I forgot, but she wants to sell the young servant girl off to this other guy. The young girl leaves, and her siblings, I guess adoptive siblings, leave with her. And so it just talks about like their adventure and finding out who she is and everything. And I did enjoy it. It was engaging. I haven't read anything with a lot of the myths and legends that this book contained, so it does have like the Nises. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Nisse, and they're like, I think they're elves or trolls or dwarves. They're like, I think some kind of mythical creature that it supposedly takes care of that household, and they're like assigned a specific household, but they can be mischievous. And so that was like my first like introduction to that kind of like lore. And then like the Elf King, they have some lore about him in there, and some of the Norse god Odin in it. And so a lot more, I guess, folklore based than I was expecting, and that made it interesting for me to read. So it wasn't like particularly something I felt uncomfortable with, so I thought it was just a fine read. So I may not continue the series just because I kind of just did this actually for a reading prompt, and it just didn't intrigue me enough to continue. So that's all I have to say about that. Okay, my 3.5-star read, which is actually surprising because I thought this book would be a low rating, but 3.5 stars, pretty good. But I wouldn't say it's a super high rating, but that would be Shattered by Danny Petrie. And this follows the youngest Piper in the Alaskan Courage series, and it's her story with Landon, and basically Piper is trying to prove her brother's innocence in this murder crime. Her brother is Reef, who you briefly hear about in the first book. And so she knows he's innocent. She wants to prove his innocence. And so it talks about that trial and all this other stuff. So I really thought that this book was going to be a lower rating because Piper was just not my favorite. I think it's just the character. The first book, I just felt like she was very careless and stubborn, and that can really, like, characters like that kind of really, I guess, grate on me. So I just felt that she could be a little reckless. And anyway, but in here, she didn't bother me that much. So her and Landon, you know, they're not my favorite couple, I will say. I think that Landon does coddle her a lot, and he just seemed very, like, lovesick in this book, and that's just not my favorite thing to read about. But I enjoyed the plot a lot, and I'm really excited to continue because I think we're going to follow Gage's story. And his story, like, I found that I was really wanting to, like, unearth what happened. And, you know, I feel like that's going to be a very gripping story, a very, like, sad story. So I can't wait to read his story. And then Caden is also one of my favorite characters too, just because I don't know, I feel like I can connect with Caden a little bit, the very, like, the skeptic kind of person. So yeah, so anyway, great story, plot line. It does get a little gruesome with the murder part, but it wasn't too detailed. I'm starting to really connect with the family, and like I said, I'm going to pick up the next book hopefully soon. And that book is a Christian fiction rating of a 3 because it's pretty prevalent to the story. Okay, my 4-star reads. Let's start with Every Heartbeat by Kim Vogel Sawyer. So I finally finished a duology, but the first book, absolutely loved, 5-star range. And the second book, you follow some of the characters in the first book. The first book was called My Heart Remembers, and it followed 3 siblings in the orphan train, and really great book. And so this book, you see some characters and some cameos from the first book. So in this book, you follow 3 friends, and they are orphans themselves, and they go to school together in the midst of World War I. But I found that it doesn't really talk about World War I that much. I think towards the end is where you'll get hints of it, or like the beginning you got a hint of it, but this is mostly like following the lives of these 3 friends as they're at college. Libby, she wants to be a journalist, and so it follows like her journey through that. Then you see Petey, who wants to be a pastor, and then you have the other one, Bennett, who wants to join a frat, basically wants to belong. And so it follows their friendships and what truly matters. It also has them seeking God's will, and yeah, I really liked that aspect of the book. I wasn't as a fan of Libby, honestly, in this book, and Petey was probably more of my favorite. Yeah, I think that this was a good kind of companion in a way, even though this follows the next generation to the first book. But towards the end, I thought it was very sweet. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a Christian fiction rating of a 3, so that is very heavy, talked about God's will and his plan for your future, and his plan is good. And so, yeah. And the last 4-star. is The Captive Maiden. This is also a Christian fiction rating of a 3. I enjoyed this. This was a Cinderella retelling. You follow Valentine, who is the brother to Gabe in the 3rd book, and Gisela, who is your, Cinderella retelling person. But I thought that this was a great book. I think this one hit more of like that Christian faith than the other books that I have read. So yeah, again, this is all about God's will and him being in the midst of things, relying on him to be your strength and all of that. So Valentine was my favorite thus far. One of my favorite characters of this whole Hangenheim series. I think it's Hangenheim. But yeah, his whole demeanor was very like practical and straightforward, and so there were a couple of times where he like made me chuckle. And yeah, and Gisela I thought was a great character too. Kind of shows the struggle between wanting to do good in the midst of your oppressors, but she's not overly like good, I guess. Like you see her struggle, like especially with her stepmother and stepsisters, where she is struggling with that anger towards them and wanting to lash out. So that tugging, that inner turmoil. So I thought that was more realistic. Anyway, so yeah, I enjoyed it, and I am hopefully working through this series. All right, so before I end, I do want to talk about the readathon that I did, and that is retoldathon, and there were 5 prompts. And so quickly, I'm just going to go through the books that I did read for that. But I did read for the prompt, A Crown on the Cover, A True Princess, for A Book with a Curse. That one was supposed to be counted with the stars, and I did not get to this book, sadly. A book about a princess. I ended up doubling this one up with a retelling mashup, so I did Happily Ever Afters for both. And then Set in a Forest, I read The Princess Fugitive, which I've talked about that in my first wrap up. This readathon was hosted by At the Bright Side Girl, and she does a couple of readathons through the year. And yeah, in addition with that, I did like some nice ambient sounds. I did like an Enchanted Lake Forest ambiance as I was reading. And currently, I know the readathon's over, but I had a princess puzzle that I didn't realize that I had. So I'm currently working through that. All right, well, that was my list of books for the second half of August. And yeah, I'm curious, have you read any of these? Do you agree with some of the ratings that I have? I would like to hear your thoughts. I will talk to you guys in another video. Bye.